always wanted a brother. I always wanted a brother.
I've always wanted a prequel. Well, maybe not. Mufasa the Lion King is directed by Barry Jenkins, who's made one of my favorite films of all time, Moonlight, and tells the story of a much younger Mufasa, a Mufasa that we're not familiar with, telling his orphan story, but also his best friend and brother in Scar. But he's not Scar yet, and the movie kind of tells the unfolding plotline of that friendship. To start with the positives, I actually think Barry Jenkins does a good job directing here. Jenkins takes advantage of having a fully CG world, which means he can place the camera and move it however he wants. So that the action scenes are actually really quite enjoyable, and I was really surprised at how much I enjoyed the visual look of this movie. I actually enjoyed the performances from the child actors quite a bit, which is surprising because it's hard to find good child actors. I also think Kelvin Harrison Jr. does a really good job going from his own impression of Scar and evolving into the iconic Jeremy Irons voice.
Life's not fair, is it? You see, I shall never be king.
It reminds me very much of the Chris Hemsworth performance in Transformers 1, where it goes from his own version of the character to that iconic version we all know and love. It's really hard to pull that off and not just make it sound like an impression, but here it's probably the only thing that I really liked about Scar. By far though, my favorite performance in the movie is Mads Mikkelsen as Kyros. He gives this menacingly evil performance that's just so good. And it's one-dimensional for sure, but you can tell he's having a lot of fun, and that comes across on screen. And even though these are good elements, it's really hard to fight upstream against a very bad script, which is exactly what Mufasa the Lion King is fighting up against. The dialogue often feels stiff, the pacing is weird and all over the place, the callbacks are odd, to say the least. I don't know, me personally, I wouldn't recreate the dolly zoom dead parents reaction shot, but that's just me. I don't know what nerd culture likes. There's also a focus on a lot of uninteresting origin stuff that I just don't care about. I don't care how Rafiki got his staff.
Been running from it for so long. Ow! Jeez, what was that for?
It doesn't matter. It's in the past.
And I certainly don't care how Pride Rock got folded out like a lawn chair. The story within a story element also doesn't help, as it bogs down the pacing and it feels more like an impression of Lion King 1.5 than actually succeeding in entertaining me. But the biggest problem with this script is actually Scar. Taka is an interesting character in and of itself, but he's played in a very simple manner in the way that he's written. The moral complexity of the character isn't there, and instead are just these really weird inconsistencies. So that when the time comes for him to become Scar and betray Mufasa, which isn't a spoiler because literally, like, it's the story of the Lion King, it feels so abrupt, that change, and so unearned. That we go from, I've always wanted a brother, to debating on literally getting him murdered. But none of that really matters. The big draw of the movie is the music, and Lin-Manuel Miranda is back. He left Moana 2 in the dust, but he's here now. And it's kind of disappointing. Now, I'm not saying the music is necessarily bad. I actually think it's technically impressive. The song Say It Again, for example, does a really interesting thing with repetition and word usage to make this love ballad feel more complicated and more introspective. But just because the songs are technically impressive doesn't mean that they're catchy or gonna stay anywhere with me past the runtime. It's really disappointing because the first movie has so many iconic songs, and Lin-Manuel Miranda is like so good, But out of all of his work, this is probably the weakest outing for me. Also, the villain song sucks. Which really sucks.
Bye-bye.
Mufasa the Lion King on my scale is mid. It's not as bad as I thought it would be, but it's also not as good as I thought it could be.
You know what I love about seeing movies on opening weekend? They're always packed, right, Avery?
It's packed.
So packed.